We continue here tonight. The United Nations Children's Fund has condemned an attack on the Ugandan school, which has led to the death of 41 people. 6 others are also believed to have been abducted in Friday's attack, which officials have blamed on militants linked to the Islamic State. We're joined now by Unicef's Uganda representative, Dr Munir Safieldin. Dr Safieldin, good evening to you. Thanks for your time tonight on News at Prime. Firstly, why is it that often when we see attacks, there are children involved, abductions of this nature? Why are they such a vulnerable and seemingly easy target for some of these rebel groups?
Thank you very much, Kathy, for the invitation, and I'm happy to be with you and with your audience tonight. Let me start first by sharing my condolences with the grieving families of the killed, assassinated children and other community members. As you have rightly said, the attack was horrific, an attack on a secondary school, a private secondary school. And why schools are vulnerable? Just let us remember that the schools are usually soft targets for all of these terrorist groups. And usually there are no kind of armed forces guarding the schools or even health facilities. The protection of the schools and other health facilities as well is always based on the general principle and conviction among all parties of any conflict that schools should be spared from any form of violence and should be treated as sacred places that should not be subjected to any violence. Schools are not part of any conflict.
The kind of brutality that was, that was forced on these learners and some of the security officials that were on the school is just indescribable. Difficult for me to go into some of what happened because it really is an incredibly distressing story. What does that tell us, Dr Safieldin, about what these rebels wanted to achieve and the message that they wanted to send across, if it is about a message being sent across?
Regrettably, there is no any political message that is acceptable can be communicated from attacking the schools and civilians, especially when we talk about schools that are not part of any conflict. I believe any armed group that is fighting for a cause cannot attack a school, and definitely they will lose any credibility, any sympathy, any support from such kind of, I would say, causeless, shameless attacks. I definitely don't believe there is any meaningful message. There is no any agenda that can be achieved from attacking learners who are children, who are not armed, who are not part of any conflict in the middle of the night. Definitely this is an act of terrorism. This actually, if these groups think carefully, they have lost their case if they have had any case before.
We understand that these groups are believed to have made their way out of neighboring DR Congo, and that once the attack was done, they simply crossed the border back into Congo. Has that country been brought into this matter? And I'd be very interested to know, from a UNICEF perspective, whether there have been conversations with Congo over this as well.
As of now, the security forces are undertaking their investigations and they are trying to track the attackers. The security forces, they believe that these attackers are the same ADF group. To the best of my knowledge, ADF has not made any claim of responsibility, but according to the security forces, this is more or less the third attack of its kind from this group. At the moment, the security are handling this situation. From our UNICEF side, we are still calling on all parties to ensure the safety of the schools, to ensure the safety of learners, teachers, and support staff in these schools. We also call for the immediate unconditioned release of the abducted children and their return to their homes and to their school.
any efforts to try and preempt what might happen next would need a clear understanding of what's driving this issue. Do you think UNICEF is there yet? Do you know what's behind all of this?
What we are continuing to do is advocating to all parties to any conflict, to spare schools from conflicts, to spare students and children, and spare civilians from any kind of unjustifiable attacks like this. At the moment, as UNICEF, we don't have any communication with ADF or with any of these groups. We understand there is an ongoing war at the moment between the armed forces of Uganda and the ADF groups inside Congo. And we believe that the military actions that are taken by the Uganda Uganda armed forces are meant to preempt such this kind of future attacks on the communities and on the schools inside Uganda. And we hope that the ADF, if they are the ones behind this attack, or whoever is behind this attack, will come to sense and understand that if they have any meaningful message, if they have any political agenda that they need to serve, it cannot be served through violence, especially violence targeting innocent children in schools.
This attack took place on Friday. Already when one looks at the fact that these children were abducted and time passing by, there is of course a concern around the ability then to recover them, because we know with cases of this nature, the longer it takes between recovery efforts, then the more difficult it will be to eventually find them. Right now, what is being done? What are the efforts that are being made to try and locate these girls?
The security forces, the armed forces of Uganda, I believe, are in a better position to speak about ongoing efforts to release these children. From UNICEF side, we are hopeful, we are optimistic that these children would come back safely and join their families. Yes, the longer the process takes to recover these children, the higher the risk of not getting them back. But at the moment, we remain optimistic that these children will be saved and will return safe to their families and to their schools soon.
All right. Dr. Safieldin, thank you so much for your time. He's the UNICEF Uganda representative.